what's up, guys? It's Confessions of a Doctorholic with Hafsa Slayman, and today I've got Joanna on air, and we're going to talk about something that most career-driven women talk about, and it involves eggs. So tune in. All right, so Joanna, now you are in the hot spot. I've got a question that I've been dying to ask you. Ever since we all went to the sea together, do you remember that time at the start of the year when we were relatively stress-free, just floating around in Ayia Napa?
Seems like an eon ago, but yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned you wanted to get something done. Egg freezing. Do you remember this now?
Yeah. I don't remember how it came up in conversation, but that is definitely something that I would say.
All right, so tell me more about it.
Egg freezing. Okay, so the idea is that career-driven women are waiting longer and longer to start families. And the idea behind egg freezing is that you have this reservoir of eggs that you freeze when you're young. At some point in the future, if you can't conceive naturally, that you can use your reservoir in order to go through IVF, in vitro fertilization, and you still get to have a baby that is biologically yours, and it's a plan B, honestly.
That sounds really good. So I'm just going to take us back a step. When Joanna says reservoir, basically every one of us women that's listening to the show, and both of us included, when we are born with a limited number of eggs. So that's why people, as you go older, you run out of eggs, and then you end up having menopause, and before menopause, things can get a little bit tricky as well. So that's why the idea would be to freeze your eggs when you're younger, and then you can use it later on when you're older. So after the in vitro fertilization, would you use a surrogate or would it be in your womb?
Well, really, it depends on your condition at the time, right? You can't really say that to begin with. The idea is that your eggs are at their highest fertility in your early 20s. And the older you get, the more the chance that when the time comes for you to conceive, your eggs won't be able to split properly, for lack of a better word. And this can basically increase your chances of having a child with a syndrome, because at that point your eggs are old and they don't know how to split. So the idea is kind of you're trying to prevent pregnancy-related complications by having fresh young eggs which have just been flash frozen.
Yeah. And the other thing is, you don't necessarily always have to have a syndrome. Sometimes you can just end up having a miscarriage. So to avoid those things happening as well, it might be a good idea to freeze your eggs earlier. So I'm going to tell you guys some other reasons why you might want to freeze your eggs. So if you have any conditions that could affect your fertility, so something like sickle cell anemia, or some people with autoimmune conditions like lupus, sometimes this could be a good option for you. Another reason you might get it done is, say, if you're undergoing cancer treatment. So basically, with chemotherapy and radiotherapy, it affects the fastest dividing cells, and it could also affect your eggs. So instead of going through it and basically losing your eggs, you can freeze them and then undergo the chemotherapy or radiotherapy. Some people also do it if they're struggling to conceive, so for in vitro fertilization. And also, just as Joanna said, it could also be just because, you think it's a great idea to freeze your eggs earlier on so that if anything happens, if you decide to have babies later on in life, you still have viable eggs. So what are the risks of this procedure?
So it is a procedure. You do need to go to a trained obstetrician gynecologist. And you also need to have a preparatory process before you go to get your eggs frozen. So it is a decision that once made, it's going to take some time before you actually get your eggs frozen.
How long are we talking when you said it takes quite a while?
So again, you can't really put an exact number on this because it does have to do with each individual woman. It has to do with how your body handles a specific drug that's going to be given to you in order to promote egg production. And it also has to do with a lot of different hormones that have to do with your menstrual cycle as well. So you can't really put an exact date on it, and you have to be monitored by a specialist. I would say approximately, let's say you make the decision to get your eggs frozen in the summer, that by the winter time, you will be able to get the procedure done. Give it about 6 months and you should be good.
So, some of the other risks that we can talk about is emotional risks. So sometimes, for some people, they have huge hope in freezing the eggs, and sometimes apparently it doesn't work out that well. So, as Joanna mentioned before, every individual is very different. So, although it's a good idea to freeze them now, sometimes you don't actually know if it will work 100% in the future. So, that could emotionally hurt people. Sometimes the egg retrieval procedure also has complications because basically they have to put a needle in to retrieve these eggs. So sometimes it can get damaged due to infection, sometimes it can be damaged due to other causes as well, and they don't actually know that unless they go in. And finally, some of the fertility drugs that they give can cause some side effects. A couple of the ones that have been mentioned on this website is that you can have a swollen ovary, sometimes it can be painful the next time you have your period. In general, these drugs are quite intense because they're hormonal and they stimulate maturation of these eggs. So, how does the procedure work from your knowledge? Like, what did they explain to you?
So, what they explained to me is after I have done all of the appropriate pre-procedure checks and I've taken my medication and we are sure that I have good eggs for retrieval, I am going to be in an outpatient department. I'm going to be under a local anesthetic, so I'm going to be awake, but I won't be feeling any pain.
That's very important.
Very important. And I mean, it is egg retrieval, so it is a sharp metal object, foreign object, finding my eggs in my body, grabbing them, taking them out, and flash freezing them.
Sounds good. And do you know anything about how they freeze it?
If I remember well from what they told me, it's in liquid nitrogen. And this allows them to freeze very quickly. It's very efficient, which is going to allow them to be preserved much better.
So we're talking temperatures like sub-zero temperatures. It is very cold.
Yeah, absolutely. They're going to be, they're going to be frozen. It's ice age. The idea behind freezing them at such a low temperature is to preserve them for long periods of time, because if you're getting your eggs frozen, you want them to be in good working condition, 5-10 years down the line. So these low temperatures are going to let that happen.
Okay, here's the other thing. Where do you carry it? Like, you can't carry it in your purse, so where would they put your eggs?
What, you mean like make a necklace out of my eggs and just put them... No. You're not carrying them. You're not holding onto them. They are not yours to take home. They will be in a laboratory facility, and they will be under these extreme cold conditions, which honestly your refrigerator at home can only dream of reaching these temperatures. So you're not going to have access to them.
So if you want to move to another country for whatever reason, like you get married or whatever, you move to another country, what would you do with your eggs? Do they ship them?
No. Can you imagine shipping eggs long distances? It's bad enough trying to get eggs from the supermarket to your house. This is not an option. If you get your eggs frozen in one country, then they're staying there, and not only the country, they're staying in the city, in the town, on the street, in the same lab.
Something that Amazon cannot do.
No.
Or drones. Good to know for the future. Alright, so, and when do you think you're gonna get it done?
Should be this year sometime. I had a procedure for a torn ACL from a skiing accident, which was the funnest time ever. And I had to basically postpone my egg freezing. But my ACL is now very well. I'm almost done with my recommended physios, and I should be back on track soon.
And back to your fencing, eh?
I hope so. I really hope so.
Fingers crossed, do not mess with Joanna.